Welcome everyone to episode 36 of Popcorn Peeps. This is the podcast in which we venture through the Hollywood Reporter's top 100 films of all time and give our thoughts along the way. In this episode, we're going to discuss the 1980s sports drama based on a true story, Raging Bull. The film was directed by Martin Scorsese and stars Robert De Niro, Joe Pesci, and Kathy Moriarty. To break down this film, I am joined by... I just left this section blank in my notes. I normally come back to it when I think of funny names. Not today, man. We're joined by Craig Moore.
Hey, everybody. I want a nice, clean fight.
Sara Alexander.
He ain't pretty no more.
And Chris McMullen.
Good evening.
Anyway, what are your first impressions of Raging Bull?
I always thought that this was a sports movie, and maybe that's never why I put too much credence in it, but watching this back, it is so not in the same vein as Rocky at all, and I found that the boxing component, I don't know if it's a metaphor would be the correct term or what it is, but that seemed to just be a continuation of his life and like a way for him to bring out things in his life onto the boxing ring. The outcome wasn't really the main purpose, or him training for the fights wasn't the main purpose. It was just his life reflected in the ring. He was always on. He always was ready in the ring, and in real life he was just always on attack. And yeah, he dealt with a lot of his issues in the ring. And I found this, instead of a sports movie, it seemed to be more of a character study.
I think that makes a lot of sense because originally Scorsese didn't want to do the film. He wasn't interested in boxing at all, but when he connected the metaphor of boxing to anything else someone could be struggling with, then he began to see it as less of a sports-related film and more of just a character drama and a journey and a redemption arc and a couple of other things. And so I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, you introduced this movie as a sports movie. I don't think that counts at all. This is a kind of an emotional drama. This is a story about the characters. Specifically, it's a story about the Raging Bull. It's kind of a story, it's almost like a period piece about this man who the only emotion he's comfortable expressing is anger, even though he feels tons of other emotions. The only one that he's able to express is anger, and the only way he's able to express it is through shouting and hitting things. He's a very unhealthy man, and if it makes it sound like I'm giving credibility and I was impressed by this film, I would love to say that I was, but unfortunately a lot of the film, because that character was very one-dimensional, it was annoying.
Interesting. How about you, Chris?
This was interesting. The really cool thing about Jake is this is a movie where the Blanche is the main character.
Yeah.
Right? I fucking hated him. I loved De Niro's acting. The story was meh, but some of the cinematography and some of the techniques used were awesome.
I totally agree with you, man. Like, you hate this character, but like, you can't say that De Niro didn't deserve all of the accolades he got. He comes on screen, and if you see him and Vicky on screen at the same time, De Niro just brings this presence of stress and tension, and you're like, oh god, like, what is this lunatic gonna do? He just brings the character, the psychopath, to life. Yeah, the film is a technical masterclass. You got the amazing audio, acting, choreography. All of this is great, but it's extremely uncomfortable to watch. And now I don't mean that the film isn't worth making. There's a lot of great uncomfortable films. Schindler's List we're going to check out in a little bit. But man, that being said, Raging Bull was not one of those great uncomfortable movies. Focusing a little bit more on the narrative, I felt like I was a little bit confused as to what the takeaway was supposed to be. You start off with this like Rocky style rise to the top, but you kind of get bait and switched a little bit because it almost converts itself into like a full redemption story. But the only issue is that I never felt like this guy was ever redeemed at all. So like, what's the messages? Is he's learned from his experience in the chain gang and losing everything that I've been living my life wrong? Or is it like symbolism for like sometimes life's a bitch and so maybe he doesn't get his just desserts? I just couldn't ever find myself in a place at the end where I felt happy with the way we got there or any of the resolution of anything. I don't know. It felt a little messy. LaMotta should have been behind bars for the rest of it, and that was the only way I was going to be satisfied. Fuck this guy.
No, I disagree with Jordan. I don't think there was a redemption in this. I don't think he did anything worthy for redemption. Like, he just paid the price for the things that he did. But seeing him at the end play the victim so much, like he recited that dialogue from On the Waterfront.
How dare you cite lines to a significantly better movie than you are in?
It was perfect because he's talking to himself in the mirror. And so he's saying, like, one is Charlie, one is Terry. But he doesn't get that because in his head, he's still thinking that everybody else did this to me. The mob did this to me. My actual brother did this to me. But it's him. He's his own worst enemy. And that's what I liked about this movie. With Rocky, They really tried to make him a lovable idiot, even though he did some fucked up things. In this movie, this guy was just a piece of shit. Some people are, and some people don't get redemption at the end. It doesn't have to be tied up in a pretty package. He doesn't have any redeeming qualities. He is just an awful, insecure person, and I thought De Niro did that perfectly.
I thought that the dialogue in this movie was a D plus at best. I found it annoying. I found it carried on a lot of the time. It was way too cyclical, and I understand that what they were trying to do is they were trying to build this character as a guy who never let stuff go. But goddamn, some of these scenes went on way longer over the same stuff than they needed to. Where, like, I'm saying to Jordan, I say, "Hey, hand me that drink, will you?" And you're like, "You want this drink?" "Yeah, I want that drink." "How many times I gotta tell you I want that drink? Give me the drink. I need the cup. Why don't you pour the liquid into the damn cup and hand me the drink? You want this drink? I'm gonna give you the drink. Yeah, give me the drink." Like, holy fuck, give him the drink.
Welcome to every, like, Italian stereotype mob movie. And then there's a way order in there, and like,
"Why don't you get it yourself? Fuck you, no fuck you." Like, why is it? Oh my god, this was like half the fucking movie was these conversations that provided me nothing and went nowhere. It was so annoying.
Unless it was coming from Joey, in which case, all bangers. Very funny. At least his were clever. Nobody else's were clever,
Yeah.
but if Joey was popping off or doing some bit, like, it was always great. Like,
Joey had some great bits. Like, I liked when he was in the club and he leans over. He's like, "You know what? I'm sorry about it. Here, let me clean off your tie." And then he takes the drink and he throws it at the guy again. He's like, "Here, go fuck yourself." Like, that bait and switch. At least it was clever. You're right. That was clever. But a lot of it coming from Jake was just irritating, and it happened way too many times in the film.
I think my favorite Joey one, just while we're on the topic, is when they're talking about who's the guy he fights? The young whippersnapper.
Gennaro?
Oh, Gennaro. Yeah, when Vicky brings up Gennaro, he's like, "Oh, he's got a pretty face." And Joey's just got like, "What are you getting so upset for? Who cares if he got a pretty face? You go in the ring, you mess it up a little, then you don't got a pretty face no more. Problem solved."
Yeah.
Like, shit like that. It was so good. But, like, the overall narrative, like, as much as some of the elements stood out to me, like, again, like, all of the production side of things was good, I just didn't find, like other than just being stressed, it made me feel emotion, but I didn't leave being like, wow, what a great story, what a great metaphor, what a great blank. I didn't feel like there was
but
a
it was
takeaway
it was a
from
biopic. You gotta think of it as a biopic, right?
But, like, is
Like,
this story even worth telling? Like,
I think it is.
Yeah, absolutely. This story has a great big glaring moral in it in big neon letters, which is funny because it's black and white, but great big neon letters that if you can't see what the moral is, Jordan, then maybe you are the man who doesn't need to see it. The moral of this story is get therapy. If you can't communicate your emotions with people in ways other than screaming at them and hitting things, then you need to fucking talk to a therapist.
I mean, okay, sure, but I felt like I really understood why this got mixed reviews upon its release. Because again, this was one of the ones that had a slow burn, right? It came out and people were 50-50 on it. Audiences weren't sure, critics weren't sure. And then over time, for whatever reason, as a lot of these films do, they gain this cult following and it somehow penetrates into the mainstream. I feel like if your film is orientated towards psychopathic lunatics, why is it on a list like this? Like, this seems super niche.
Because it's not. On release, it was probably 50-50 because people thought they were going to go in and see a boxing movie. People thought they were going to go in and see a new Rocky movie, right? But that's not what they got. They got a psychological drama about a man whose head wasn't right, probably because he got punched in it so many times.
There was a lot of that. It's a study in toxic masculinity.
Sure, absolutely.
Right? Like that's, and I can see why maybe at least some percentage of the 1980 men audience wouldn't have enjoyed that. Might have hit a little too close to home.
Like, imagine you're a 30-year-old man in 1980, so you were born in 1950, and you think you're going to go in and watch a boxing movie, but what you actually see is a story of a man who acts like you and your father did, who has his entire life fall apart around him, and you leave just feeling sad.
Mm-hmm.
Well said.
I didn't know it was based on a true story until after I watched it. And I felt like the fact that it was based on a true story made it worse. I looked into a little bit of the backstory, and oddly enough, this is an incredibly tame and censored version of the real events. And I almost feel like producing something like this does such a disservice to the victims of this real story, that the children and Vicky personally. She was beat multiple times within an inch of her life, and you don't see that. It's sterilized significantly. I don't think you see this and really understand the gravity of the situation. I think it's almost a misrepresentation or a glorification of some of the actual events that transpired, and I really didn't like that.
I would disagree because I don't think you could look at this and say it glorified anything to do with him. Like, I came out thinking he's a piece of shit. Even at the end of the movie, he's still a piece of shit.
That's literally that's how I wrote down the description of him.
He's even worse than they show you.
Right. So when he saw it later in life, he reached out to Vicky and he's like, was I this bad? And she's like, you were worse. So seeing this made him think like, oh shit, I was a piece of shit. But no, in reality, you were so much worse than that. So yeah, I don't think this glorified anything. And the victims, it's all within the family. And I'm assuming by that point, if he's still on speaking terms with it, they have some type of arrangement. Like, this wasn't like a mass shooting or something. It was just a family story. He sold the right to this book and there it is.
You got to keep in mind too, 1980. You don't get what you could show in 80 is very different than what you can show in 2020 or 2014 even.
I agree, Chris. I think there was one scene where she had a bruise on her face, and the reason that we didn't see her broken nose and blood and whatever she went through, that poor woman, whatever she went through, the reason we don't see it is because Scorsese probably wasn't allowed to show it.
He actually held on to his rights over post-production way more than a lot of other directors, because he believed this was going to be one of his final giant projects and he wanted it to be a swan song, and so he basically clung to it and tried as best he could to keep other people's hands off of it. But I think you're right. I think that makes a lot of sense. He showed what he thought he could get away with. Do you guys want to talk a little bit about some of our characters here?
Absolutely.
Who do you guys want to start with?
I don't know.
We talked a little
Yeah,
bit
I don't know
about
if we know
Jake
need
already.
to talk about Jake further, but like Joey or Vicky.
Hold on, I just do want to get one gauge on Jake here. So at the very beginning, he was married and then he went and started picking up this 15-year-old girl. Jordan, scale of 1 to 10, how much is this guy an SFB?
Oh, he resets the scale. SFB is a scale for like lesser tier assholes. There's a SS, what was it? Super SOB scale, and that's a whole other range of 1 to 10. He's on there somewhere.
I googled this just so we're on the topic of picking up 15-year-olds to be like, holy shit.
Speaking of pedophiles.
So in reality, when she was 15, he was like 19, 20. But shooting this, the actress Kathy was 20, playing a 15-year-old, but Robert De Niro was 37. And I was still like, that's 17 years.
She was 18 when they filmed it.
Oh, could be, but she was 20 when it was released, and I just went by the year.
But it was
Either way,
4-year gap.
Weird.
4-year gap is fine. It's not awesome.
5-year gap at that point in your life is a massive fucking gap. You're talking about someone who's basically like partly of the way through puberty compared to someone whose brain is just about done developing. Like they're an adult, they're a grown up. They're a child. I'm sorry, a 16-year-old is a child and shouldn't be fucking a 21-year-old man.
Where I thought this was going to go is he was going to basically spin in circles, and we were going to see the same cycle repeated over and over again. He was going to have his first wife, he was going to love the honeymoon stage, ruin the relationship, but you don't get to see that bit, so you get to see what he did with his first wife, with his second wife, and I thought this was going to be very cyclical, and he was going to move from woman to woman, cheating on them until at some point he would learn.
He was married 7 times.
Was he?
Yeah.
Oh, so it did end up happening, and I thought that was an interesting story to see just how incapable someone is of learning from their past mistakes, because you see this a lot with real people in real life too, where they do the same things over and over again, and you think like, how can you not realize what's wrong with you? And I thought that's the kind of story we were going to get here, so I thought that was interesting to see him kind of leave a tarnished first relationship and then immediately ruin the second one once he got bored. Do you just want to talk a little bit about Vicky?
I mean, good for her for finally leaving, but she didn't get she was an accessory.
She was an accessory?
Yeah, she wasn't not an accessory to the crime, an accessory to the story.
Oh, okay, yeah, you and I totally went in different directions.
Oh yeah, no.
I was like, what, like, so she's fucking culpable to her?
No, calm down.
Holy victim blaming, Batman.
I just look like a boomer. I'm not a boomer.
Okay, sorry.
Gen
Carry
X.
on. You were saying she was an accessory, and I was like,
she was just a plot point. We got to see her grow a little bit and finally leave him after way too long.
even that was almost done as more of an event to show us what happened to him next.
Oh yeah, that's exactly right. You on the money. On the money.
I thought
Exactly.
the actress did a really good job, though, with the role that she had to play 15, and then especially when they were fighting, because he was accusing her of sleeping with his brother, and she's like, yeah, and I fucked the rest of the neighborhood too. And that whole fight, I thought she did an amazing job. And I had never heard of her before. I've never seen this actress in my life.
Yeah, I've only seen her. One thing actually was really interesting was there's some line and she's like, he doesn't want to fuck me. So acknowledging that it's not like your stereotypical excuse, well, she doesn't want to, like I the reason I go run around is because my wife here at home just isn't interested. And they made it very clear that was not the case.
He has some issues and he's insecure about them. And I think that just contributes to his rage. I can't fulfill her, so she has to be
emotional
cheating.
intelligence.
Yeah, 0 EQ.
I'm going to take a shot in the dark here and say they probably didn't have kids' help phone in the 1940s, which is a real tragedy because Vicky could have used some help. Even seeing Vicky's struggle, I thought, was a great kind of gateway into seeing how, not exactly all women, but a lot of women were treated during the middle part of the century there. You just lose all of your autonomy, and seeing it from 2022, at least you know that you've made a little bit of progress. Because as you said, based on a true story. And not to say that domestic violence doesn't happen now, but it really feels like we've come a long way since then. It was kind of like our world's crumbling around us. Gas is $84 a gallon, but at least this isn't necessarily the reality we live in anymore.
At least women can have jobs and open their own bank accounts.
Absolutely.
So at least you got that going for you.
And more
which is
frowned
nice.
upon to date 15-year-olds now, I would think, too. So you're not ensnaring them as a child as much.
I learned too, prior to this relationship, she started dating Jake when she was 15. She was also raped when she was 14. So before she even got into this disaster with Jake, she was already like, this wasn't even the start to her descent into this nightmare life. She had a really, really rough go of it. And it makes it a little more believable now that she would put up with some of this if she's had a history and a childhood of abuse and torment like that. Like, you can see that she would start to normalize this kind of erratic and absurd behavior. And she did bring my favorite moment of the movie, though. When she finally had the courage to drive up in the car and say, hey, kick rocks, I'm taking the kids, I'm leaving you. I talked to a lawyer, it's done. I made a plan this time and left. I was like, you go, girl. Fuck this guy. And at least in a film where like everything is so crushingly depressing, you get a little bit of high there towards the end of the film. Finally, like, something good has happened to some of these people that actually deserve it. And she got out before he turned her into a puddle of mush, which is probably what could have even happened at that point. Do you have a couple things I wanted to bring up? Every single damn time you got a mafia, it's Russian or Italian. That's a little fucked up. Anyway, who wants to join my mafia organization? I'm sick of working 9 to 5. Let's get into organized crime. Any takers? No?
Hey, I'm not part of the mafia.
I am not already engaged in a criminal operation.
Don't put it into words, Craig. That's like the first rule. Fuck this guy.
You're lucky. You're lucky. Was this one of the films that kind of pioneered that? I wouldn't think so, but like...
The stereotype came from the organized crime that occurred
when the Italians immigrated to the United States within their mafia organizations and then continued it here. That's what brought it. And then when they got in...
Okay, but like Polish people can't run a meth organization.
They sure can.
Oh, they sure can. And there's a Polish mafia. There's a Vietnamese mafia.
But you never see it in film, ever. Ever.
Maybe it's because you only watched, what are we at? You've watched about 50 films in your life? But
I got bullied into watching Nobody, and that had a Russian mafia. So I mean, one of the two.
Are you sure they were Russian? They could have been Chechnyan. They could have been Ukrainian.
No, they're definitely Russian.
There's this other, what's that other one? You may not have heard it. The Yakuza?
Oh, my other point here is just about the On the Waterfront call out. I think it's so funny that this guy thinks he could have had class. He could have been a contender, and everyone else is bringing him down. Like he's been sabotaged by anyone who isn't himself.
I thought it was perfect.
I think it's perfect. It speaks to him so well.
Yeah. I thought it was perfect.
I know you On the Waterfront fanboys would be creaming yourself at the end of that movie, too.
I was just like, wow, congratulations. You've now referenced a better movie than yourself, or Scorsese. Well done. Heard he was going to possibly quote like some British stuff, some like King Richard or whatever, but they thought this was more topical because it was also a film that took place in America, and so it would have resonated more with the kind of...
Yeah, and you have the boxing.
Isn't the Bronx in like...
the brother.
England?
Isn't the Bronx in Africa?
Isn't the Bronx in South America?
No, I know geography now.
He knows that.
Did you guys hear about the Bronx Bull unofficial sequel?
I read just the headline on Wikipedia, but I didn't...
I haven't seen it, but I thought it was so funny that they tried to piggyback back. Yeah, 2017. They just tried to piggyback. They're like, oh, this is this classic film, one of the best films of all time. And they're just like, their original title was Raging Bull 2, the continuation of the LaMotta saga. Like, yeah, I'm just gonna make Matrix 5, guys.
And then wasn't it Scorsese didn't give him the rights to make the sequel, so that's why they rechanged it to like the Bronx
Yeah, they
Bull.
sued them.
Because he didn't want it affiliated with his movie at all.
They sued him. He's like, no,
Yeah.
fuck you. Get your pile of garbage away from my masterpiece.
Sure, I made millions off of your life story, but you don't need to continue it.
Have you seen it? The Bronx?
No, but I'm curious.
It's probably just some shitty boxing movie.
Is it actually a sequel, or is it just like a 2016 retelling?
No,
No, it's a sequel, but it's just Jake did it himself. Like he was the spur behind it.
Oh, so it's like a vanity piece.
probably.
Yes.
He
Okay.
only died in like 2017. He lived to be super
Yeah.
old. I guess when you're the biggest, strongest guy and you don't fuck with you, you can live pretty long.
Has a 41% on Rotten Tomatoes.
But how much of that is angry Scorsese fanboys?
True.
Yeah, when you factor that in, it's probably watchable.
We should watch
Do you guys
it.
have anything else you want to bring up before we move on?
Yes, I want to talk about Joey.
Joey was fucking hilarious.
So I've seen Joe Pesci in lots of stuff. Surprisingly, another Italian mafia movie.
Really? Joe Pesci.
Fellows, you may have heard of that. Yeah, Joe Pesci. Did you notice there was actually quite a few people who were in Raging Bull who were also in Goodfellas? That was pretty awesome. Or there's also some
I
Sopranos
think they just
people too.
got they have like the list,
Yeah.
like the mobster list.
Yeah.
Hey,
Call
hey,
through
Italian
it.
mobsters, we have a film we're making. Bring the
Who's
whole
free?
family.
There's just one agent, and these are all his clients. And anytime someone wants to make a mob movie, they just call up and it's like, "Hey, Sam, yeah, get your boys together. We're filming another piece."
Joe, you hear that my boy Scorsese's having a spaghetti dinner? Bring the whole family.
I can't do the accent because it's racist, but if Jordan does it, it's okay.
Yeah, because he's a Costa, just to be clear. He gets a pass. I saw Joe Pesci was in this, and I said to Shelley before the thing, are we going to get the unhinged Joe Pesci?
Oh yeah, that's
Right.
a good question, right? Because there's like two Joe Pescis. There's the funny guy,
Yeah,
and
there's
the
my cousin Vinny,
crazy guy.
and there's whatever the character's name is from Goodfellas, and we got the unhinged one.
It was good. We
It
got
makes
the
me
good one.
wonder if the door scene in Daredevil was actually a callback to Raging Bull.
I don't know. That'd be interesting.
Because there is a scene where Kingpin smashes someone's head inside in a door.
Like a car door?
A car door, like very similar to Raging
I
Bull.
buy it. Joey's fantastic, and Pesci absolutely kills it. It's crazy to think that this guy couldn't get gigs and actually left Hollywood for years, and then they brought him back into the fold because they saw one of his older movies and thought he'd be a good fit. So he was like totally out of the game. I think he was working as a waiter at the time, but they just brought him back in, and I can't help but think if this movie was made in 2022, we'd have Jonah Hill as Joey.
God.
Just with all of the profanity
Yup.
and the way they kind of act, I felt like there were a lot of
Yeah,
parallels.
yeah.
But I had so much fun. His lines
definitely.
are great, and you try to figure this guy out for a little bit. You're like, is he a bad guy? Is he a good guy? You see him like rip Vicky out of the club because she's talking with another guy, and you think, oh, this bad guy just wants to help his brother out or whatever and keep her in chains. And then he doesn't tell his brother, and you think, oh wow, maybe he has a little bit of sympathy for the situation that's going on. And then you find out that's not even the case because she's trying to fuck her, and that's why he doesn't tell his brother. A little bit of good, a little bit of bad. He just seems to kind of be looking out for himself, and
Yeah, he was a nuanced
he had a little bit
character.
more,
He was good.
a little bit more of a dynamic than everybody else.
He was a brother, and he was a brother-in-law. Like, he pulled her out of that club, and yeah, he acted like a fucking wild animal, and his brother found out, he told his brother, oh, I got in a fight down at the club, but he knew full well that if he said, because Vicky was there with another guy, then his brother would have flown off the handle and beat the shit out of her. So, like, he was just a dude trying to survive in the most frictionless way possible.
This sounds so stupid, but he was evil, but he was a way more palatable evil than Jake
That's
was.
fair. That's
He was
totally
like
fair.
almost like a cartoony kind of evil versus like a
I
genuine
don't even know
evil.
if I think he was evil. I think he was just tied to a live hand grenade, and he was trying to survive as best as he could.
Yeah.
Well put.
Yeah, that's true. But when you're trying to survive, you don't fuck the hand grenade's sidearm.
Don't tell me how to live my life. So I alluded to it earlier. The stylistic stuff that's in this movie that Scorsese puts in was just, it probably moved this up quite a bit on my list. Specifically, the stills of the fights and the
was
home
amazing.
movies to show that progression of like 10 years or something. That was fucking perfection. That was so good. And the only burst of color in the movie is wholesome, pure moments that have been caught on film, which I think is probably a pretty big parallel to most people's lives. right? That's sort of the equivalent of the 1940s Instagram. Here's the home movies where everything is perfect and it's in shiny color. And if you just watch that, you'd be like, wow, their life is great.
You're so fucking smart, Chris. Look at you. Look at you go.
I have it noted here as like, I keep seeing mirrors and reflections, but I don't know what the intention is. But I noticed that in a lot of scenes, there were always mirrors. So you could see what Joey was doing when he wasn't facing you, but I don't know what it meant, because I was like, he's not self-reflective, so is that supposed to show that? I knew it was intentional.
Scorsese might have just found that setting technique out and was like, hey, I like this. You can see the characters from multiple angles. We're going to put this in tons of shots.
I have one more thing just before we go to ranking. So in Bonnie and Clyde, that one was considered the first movie of this new Hollywood production, whereas this is now considered the final new Hollywood film. During that period, that's when there was more separation from studio control. Directors could do and choose projects that they wanted, and they had a lot more creative control. In the 70s, we started to get a lot of movies where studios recognized there were franchise opportunities, like Star Wars, and so that's when they ended the director's control and went more into the importance of blockbusters and marketing and advertising.
You mean we're not in the franchise era right now?
Yeah, we still are.
Yeah, okay.
800 Lord of the Rings movies later, 700 Star Wars movies later. God knows how many Marvel movies still yet to come. Oh, and new Avatar.
And new Downton Abbey.
Like it's oh, and new Ghostbusters.
Do you have any music note?
I do have a music note. Most of this film borrows its music from like Italian and American pop culture of the era in which it's set, which is not very creative, but did wonders to make this old film feel old, like 1940s old, 1950s old. And of course, along with the choice of black and white. But the music itself is great. It wouldn't be in your workout playlist, but if you were having like a romantic date or you wanted to set like a sophisticated atmosphere, a little bit of elegance, like these tunes are great to pop on, like Ella Fitzgerald, the Ink Spots, Harry James. Like they're old tunes, but they still hold up. They're fun. They're kind of stuff you would hear in like Fallout New Vegas, Fallout 3, that kind of thing. And yeah, they've got some charm to it. It's different.
I think if I'm going to have a romantic date, I'm not going to put on the soundtrack about a guy who beats the shit out of his significant other all the time.
No, but these were popular songs. Like before they were in Raging Bull, they were just radio songs.
It's funnier the way I said it.
It is.
Yeah.
I was thinking the exact same thing. I have a musical note.
Okay.
See.
I don't know that I paid too much attention to the music, but I did notice in the one boxing scene where there was just complete silence. And I think that was maybe the final one, which I thought was a nice sound choice.
The boxing scenes were cool. This was a little bit different for the time. My understanding is a lot of the boxing scenes prior to this, the camera was set as a spectator, but Scorsese really made an effort to get in the ring and really try and simulate some of the emotions that the boxers would be feeling, kind of looking straight into the gloves of this big brooding opponent. And again,
There was one where he gets hit and the blood just covers the judges.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
That was very Tarantino-esque.
Yeah, right?
And then the blood dripping from the rope. I liked that too.
He said he went to see a couple fights to like kind of get a vibe for it, and he saw the blood on a rope thing like live happen. He's like, that's sick. I'm putting that in my movie.
Too, sorry Jordan, that he changed the ring size, so as we got closer to the end of the movie, the rings were constructed larger and larger to make him feel smaller and smaller.
That's awesome. That is awesome.
Well, folks, we're at that point in the show where we're going to rank this bad boy amongst the other films we've seen so far. If you're following along with the YouTube video, there's a list at the top of the description on YouTube to check out our lists, or on popcornpeeps.com. But without further ado, Sarah, where are you going to slap this bad boy?
I'm putting this in my 6th position, below Memento and above Dr. Zhivago. I loved everything intentional about this movie and its construction, and I also liked the character of Jake as one-dimensional, as some may think. I thought that it was an incredible performance, and all of the performances in this were incredible.
Very cool. That we were Memento Zhivago buddies until now.
Wait. I thought Ghostbusters got placed at the bottom because it did something nasty to women, and this guy gets number 6.
It did something nasty as a joke and as to move the plot. This is just a shitty person. I'm not ranking him in my top 6.
Okay.
I'm ranking this overall movie.
So I can't make fun of women, but I can physically harm them, and it's fine then. Okay, good.
Jordan, for fuck's sakes.
Jordan!
Thanks, everyone. It was great having a podcast. No, I totally agree with you, Sarah. We were even talking about that. Shelley might have actually said, I wonder what Sarah's going to think of this one. Because we were like, you know what? In Ghostbusters, we're supposed to admire Venkman. And in this, the phrase du jour, he's a piece of shit.
There was a lot of potential in this movie, but I found the dialogue painful. and annoying, and it made the movie plod along at a frustrating pace. Felt like it was way longer than it needed to be to tell the story it did, and yet somehow failed to put the things in the story that I needed to see. So I am placing this very far down my list at number 26, below Ghostbusters, only because I just didn't enjoy watching it, and I will never watch it again.
I also enjoyed Ghostbusters more.
That's not the takeaway.
I'm also putting it at 30, below Deer Hunter and above Bridge on the River Kwai.
Wait a second. You think
I
Deer
didn't-
Hunter is better than
I
this?
didn't resonate with any of this movie. Yeah.
Deer Hunter.
Deer Hunter at least had some. I like the Deer Hunter takeaway. I just felt like I didn't get to take away anything from this film that I personally could grow from, or I found that resonated with me. Maybe I wasn't the target audience. I don't think it's a bad film. I think it's a masterclass in technical production, but the narrative left me wanting.
It's got imagery that's going to stick with me forever.
It
is Deer Hunter just makes me angry to talk about.
I just don't like seeing
I'm already over this movie. I didn't ever need to watch it, ever.
I'm glad I watched it.
I don't think it's that poetic, and we needed 2 hours and 10 minutes to tell us that Jake's a piece of shit.
It took them 2 hours to tell me that you shouldn't hit people when you're upset. Like, holy fuck.
I don't know. I like how this one showed. It was like the opposite of The Wrestler. It made me think of, like, The Wrestler starts when he has a redemption. This one is just like he never gets his redemption. Even at the end, he's fucking piece of shit.
If you act like an asshole, it'll ruin your life.
Maybe I'm reading this wrong, but like it felt like there was almost like a directorial push to like make you feel for Jake when he's punching the wall in his cell and he's pulling himself up. Like, I don't know. I felt like they were like, he's learned something.
I think
he learned something. Maybe I'm just reading it wrong, but either way, it didn't resonate.
I think you're reading it wrong. I don't think there was any redemption in this, and that's what they're very clear on. That was just a pity party for himself. I viewed that as.
Maybe I wanted a redemption story, and so I'm painting that incorrectly, and then felt insatisfied with what I desired from the film because it didn't give it to me.
Yeah, so one thing that they did keep repeating in the movie, which was good, was that he wanted to do it all himself. And at the end of the day, if you do everything yourself, you're the only one responsible with what you end up with. So that was kind of nice. But that whole scene in the cell felt weird, and it was unnecessary because it provided nothing to the narrative of the character's growth. It was like, hey, I recognize that I did something wrong, but I'm not going to do anything to change my behavior. So why did you even fucking tell me that? Why waste my time with this scene?
Precise.
This is probably the most polarizing film we've seen in quite some time.
I think so, yeah. So I might as well throw my ranking in there. This is a long ranking. I did go back and forth quite a bit, even while we were talking. I know I never say this, but this ended up 12. I like The Holy Grail better, but I think Raging Bull is a better movie than Gladiator.
Chris, what the fuck are we watching in episode 37 of Popcorn Peeps?
In episode 37, we'll be watching a movie about a blue alien with like this red stripe on his head, and he finds this Earth boy and keeps him as a son instead of returning him to who he was supposed to. No, sorry, I got confused. That was Guardians of the Galaxy. We're watching Mary Poppins.
What a switch.
Because they call Yanto, he tells Yanto he's Mary Poppins.
That was good. I liked it.
Where can we watch it, Chris?
I would like to, at the same time, I want you to all say which platform you can stream it for no incremental cost. 1, 2, 3.
Disney Plus.
Roku.
Why do you fucking hate me? It's clearly Disney.
I said Disney Plus. What do you want from me? I'm only one man.
I got a Roku and some fucking random thing.
Mega upload.
That's fine.
Sponsor us.
Yes.
You can also
so
watch
you can buy it on a bunch of platforms.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the last episode of Popcorn Peeps.
We're off the rails. What happened? What's the alcohol content?
Whoa.
I haven't had anything to
Me
drink.
neither.
Also, this water bottle is pure vodka.
Yeah.
We're in rough shape today, ladies.
I don't know. I think this one is actually going to be pretty
All right,
fun.
Jordan, wrap this shit up.
I'd like to extend a special thank you to those who support the show on patreon.com. Special thank you to Craig Lewis, Erica Wilson, Sarah Renier, Frank Costa, Buster Hyman, Ryan Saranen, Jim Walmsley, and Travis Laporte. Thank you so much for your support. Craig's dying. I can see him in the face cam. And if you'd like to support the show, check out the show, or check out the links in the top of the description or on popcornpeeps.com. But until next time, I always appreciate your time. Hope you have a great evening.
Bye.